Hello all and welcome to my new channel. My name is Mick Blakey and I work as a landscape photographer in Cornwall. I'm based in Charlestown where I run my own gallery with my artist wife Sarah. My aim for this channel is to upload a series of black and white, mainly seascape videos where I will talk you through and share my editing thought process and workflow, from the raw out of camera capture to the finished fully edited image. The first image I've chosen to work on was taken at Bedruthan Steps on the North Cornwall coast. Hell of a hike down to the beach with all the gear. Those of you who've visited this location will know what I mean. This really is my favourite style of photography, and pre-visualising the finished image in my view is crucial to achieving good results. I find that shooting towards the sun is key for high contrast black and white captures. So some good contrasted cloud cover helps to diffuse the highlights, especially when shooting during the day. This image was taken around midday. Many of my images are long exposures, which helps to smooth out the sea and results in some interesting effects in the sky. I always aim to arrive at the beach around an hour before low tide, preferably out of season when it is much quieter. Also, the sand has very few footprints and is still wet, hopefully with some good reflections of any headlands in the composition. The sand is usually very wet and soft, so more often than not, I place CDs under my tripod feet, which helps avoid tripod movement during long exposures. As I set out to capture black and white images, I always set my camera preview to monochrome and always shoot in RAW, which gives you a much bigger file with far more information to work with than JPEGs. The camera I used for this capture was a Canon full-frame 5D Mark III with a Canon 16-35 lens at 18mm f/22. Exposure time was 45 seconds. Filters used were a 6-stop Firecrest Glass ND, 2-stop Lee Soft Edge ND Grad, and a Lee polarizing filter. The camera was set on bulb mode with a cable shutter release and in mirror up mode to reduce camera shake. This is the raw capture straight out of camera. Not a bad starting point. You'll notice the colour cast, which is often the case with these filters. I will correct the colour issue, but of course this is not so much a problem when working in black and white. Quick look at the before and after before I start editing. Okay, let's switch over to Lightroom. Okay, software I'm using for this edit is Lightroom Classic CC and Photoshop. I'm working on a Mac with a Wacom tablet and a stylus pen, which I'd highly recommend for photo editing. First thing I'm going to do is apply lens corrections, remove chromatic aberration, and enable profile corrections. Sharpening, I'm going to remove down to 0. That will be the very last thing I apply at the end of the edit. Now in the basic tab, Lightroom has some pretty good black and white presets. If this is the way you like to work, it's not a bad starting point, as you can see where you hover over those thumbnails. But personally, I like to just start with the raw color image and build it from there. So I'm just going to work on some global adjustments first. I'm going to address this color cast. So I'm going to grab the white balance picker, hover it over an area that I know is white in the clouds here, click there, and that makes a pretty good job of addressing that color balance. In the histogram, I've got the highlight alert box checked, but the blacks I'm not too fussed about as I'm going for a high contrast image. Okay, global adjustments into the basic tab. Just going to raise the exposure to about there. Highlights, I'm going to pull back just to get more detail in those clouds. Shadows are okay. Whites, I'm going to push as far as I can until they start clipping, then pull them back. Blacks, I'm just going to increase a little bit. Dehaze, I'm going to add 20, just gives me a crisper image. And contrast, I'm going to add 20. Yep, that's coming along nicely. Down to the tone curve. Set on linear, I'm just going to try medium. That's getting a bit too contrasty now, but I'm going to leave it on medium. Back to the basic tab and just raise the shadows to about there. Okay, that's me done with the global adjustments on the color image. I'm now going to convert to black and white. Click there. Good starting point. And firstly, I'm just going to look at the color channels in the black and white image. So down here below tone curve, I've got B and W. I'm just going to play around with the blues. If I exaggerate this, you'll see what effect that has in the sky. Gives me a nice bit of contrast. So I'm just going to leave it around about there. And then back into basic. Highlights, just drop a little bit more. Whites, just check. Clippings, so I'll just pull them back. And black's okay. That's me pretty much done with the global adjustments. Now I want to clean up the image. And for that, I'm going to move across into Photoshop. In Lightroom, I find the spot healing tool a bit slow and cumbersome. I find Photoshop much better for this purpose. So I'm going to right click, edit in Adobe Photoshop CC. I've already opened that file up. Save a bit of time. Here we go. Now the first thing I'm going to do is create a duplicate copy, which is Command J on a Mac, Control J on a PC. That just gives us a background copy, which is there just as a backup. Now I'm going to zoom into the image to start the cleanup to 100%. Press the space bar down, drag the image across. I'm starting in the left-hand corner. Find it's best to work your way from one corner up to the healing brush. Right click, and it's the spot healing brush tool that I'm using. I'm going to check the settings. I'm going for about midway on the hardness. That will give me a nice soft brush. In terms of size, I can adjust that with the left and right bracket keys. Okay, let's start moving across the image. I'm looking for blemishes, hot pixels, there's one, and dust spots, another hot pixel. Hot pixels are as a result of the low exposure. If this was a color image, they'd be in color. Couple there. There. I won't spend as long on this as I normally would, just again to save a bit of time. But Photoshop is great for this. So much quicker. can see there's quite a bit of grain in this image, which I'll address when I go back into Lightroom. Pixel there. Bit of a mark on the beach. You can see the advantage of going to these locations in the winter. Beach is so much quieter. Few people about, less footprints. And on a falling tide, you get this beautiful, wet, clean sand. I would work on that area if I had more time, but I'll leave that for now. I do like a nice clean beach. I feel it really adds to the image. And this process is so worthwhile to improve the overall look of the image. There's a rock there I want to move, so that's pretty good. Reduce the size. Hot pixel. Almost there. There. A little bit of a distraction there. That's good. Right, Command 0 on my keyboard to view at full size, and then Command- to reduce it. There's just one little distraction that's bothering me there. So I'll just clean that up. And that's done. Full screen. Okay, we're pretty much there on that. Much cleaner image. Now I'm going to flatten these layers before going back into Lightroom. And then File, Close, and Save. And here we are back in Lightroom. Now what I'm going to work on are the local adjustments. I want to draw attention to this headland. That's the focal point of my image. So I'm going into the Basic tab, and I'm just going to raise the exposure of the whole image to about there. Okay, and then I'm going to move over to the Radial Filter, which really is my favorite filter in Lightroom. I'm going to uncheck the invert box. All my sliders are zeroed, and I'm going to create a filter just around that headland. Okay, now I'm going to show the overlay mask. You can either check the box here which says show selected mask overlay, or press O on your keyboard. Feathering, I've got it around 60. So I'm just going to increase the size of that a little bit. Now the area that's affected when I start adjusting this through having the invert box unchecked will be the area overlaid in red. That's the outside of the oval. So if I remove that overlay, and now what I'm going to do is just drop the exposure. As you can see, draw more attention to the bright area at the end of the headland. In effect, we're creating a vignette, but in a much more controlled way. Just put the overlay back on. We can move that around to check the position. Yeah, that's about done. And now I'm going to click on New, check the invert box, all zeroed out. I'm going to work on dodging and burning now. So again, I'm just going to check my feathering. So I'll just place a radial filter there, overlay mask on. Yeah, it's a nice soft edge, which is what I want. Overlay off, and we'll delete that. And I'm going to start dodging and burning, mainly working with my whites to begin with. So I'm going to drag and boost the whites there, just till they clip. Draw more attention to the sky, these clouds, increase the whites. Now another good tip is when you've created a radial filter, hover over the pin, right click, and you can duplicate that adjustment and then just drag that over with the same settings. Just saves a bit of time. So we'll duplicate again, drag that down to there, duplicate to that area, duplicate. There's a surf line here which I would like to highlight. So I'm going to place a filter over there. And boost the whites. And another diagonal here that I would just like to highlight. Position it there. And again, boost the whites. Feel the sky's a bit too bright there, so I would reduce the highlights. Brings back more detail in the clouds. And also in the clouds, I feel this area here, here, and here is a little bit harsh, so I'm going to drag a filter over there and just reduce the clarity. Just softens those clouds. Here. And here. Okay. Just highlight those whites there, leading into the headland. Okay. Now this bottom right hand corner I just feel is a bit too dark, so I'm going to grab a gradient adjustment, just raise the shadows a little bit in that bottom right hand corner. Okay. Now what I find handy when you're at this stage, we've nearly completed this edit, I just like to reduce the size of the image on screen to view it, and also enable lights out, which is pressing twice on your L key, and we can remove all the clutter from the screen then. Yeah, and that's looking pretty good. Noise reduction. Let's just go full screen. I just want to zoom into an area that I know we have a lot of noise. And as I said before, I do like some grain in a black and white image, but I just want to soften this a little bit to around about +16. Okay, and then very last thing is sharpening. I'm going to add around 50 on the sharpening, but I'm going to mask the sharpening heavily by going down to the masking slider, pressing my Alt key and moving that slider along. All you need to remember is white reveals, and black conceals. So I'm really just looking to sharpen that headland, the horizon, that reflection under the headland. So I've gone up to nearly 80 on that. And I think we're pretty much there. And that's the edit completed. Okay, that wraps up my first video. Thank you so much for watching, and do feel free to leave your comments. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing and checking the notification bell. Until my next video, bye for now.